Good evening, everyone.
Couple Darav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you.
Couple Darav, we did the entire tour yesterday.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we'll do the bit Yosef now. So it says, Mash katav chai en perusho chai mamash, perush arif shemanicho ad birkat haaretz. Klamar, the had yaminan, so says bit Yosef like this. Had yaminan the kos shel bracha tzarich sheyeh chai, that which we said, that the cup of the blessing has to be undiluted. Kasher midiyamar, it's difficult. Why? Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina, because this rabbi said, Modim chachamim Rabbi Eliezer. The rabbis admit Rabbi Eliezer bekos shel bracha she'en mevarchin al hayayin ad sheitin latoch hamayim. They say they admit that you don't bless on it until you put water in there. You have to dilute it. Ulfichach piresh harif. So therefore, the Rif says they have the aminan shehei chai. That which we said that it should be raw, in other words, undiluted. Hainu dafka ad birkat haaretz. That's only on the birkat haaretz until there. V'had modim chachamim den v'rachin ala yain ad sheiten letoch hamayim. And that which we said, the rabbis agree that you can't bless on until you put water in there. Hainu birkat haaretz ve'elach. That's from the blessing of the land and from onward. Kedamina begimah, like it says in Gemara, Chai amar Rav Sheshat ad birkat haaretz. Until birkat haaretz, it's going to be undiluted. V'chen hem divrei Rambam beperk zayin minchot berachot. Also, the Rambam says like that. V'Rabbeinu Yonah and the Rosh hikshu al perush there. They asked on this perush, on this explanation. The lishna de en mevarchin al hayayin ad sheitin letoch hamayim. That which it says that you don't bless until you put water in there. Mashma de mitchilat b'chlat habracha en mevarchin, that implies that from the beginning of the blessing we don't bless. And also, since their dilution was three parts to one, 3 parts water and 1 part wine. Imken en bekos ela roba revit. So therefore, each cup has really only a quarter of a revit of wine. וכיוון שכן נמצא חסר הרבה, and therefore it turns out that it's lacking a lot. וענן מלא בעינן, and we require the full cup. ילקח נראה כפירוש רבינו תם, so therefore it seems like רבינו תם is his explanation. שחי רצה לומר מזוג קצת. When it says chai, right, it doesn't mean that it's totally undiluted. It means that it's slightly diluted. ולא כתיקונו, but not enough, right? Not totally. כדאית בפרק בן סורר ומורה, like it says in this parak. Where is this in Sanhedrin Ayin Amud Aleph? Katane eno chayav ad sheishte, because it says there that he's not liable until he drinks until he drinks it undiluted. Umokela b'mazug v'lo mazug, and it explains there that it's talking about it's slightly diluted. V'ashta lo kashya, so it says now it's no difficulty. My de'aminan shetzarich she'eh chai, right? In chai de'aminan, that which we said that it has to be undiluted. Even my diamina the end but then we said on the other hand, we don't bless until it's diluted. שאף על פי שנתן לתוכו מים כל זמן שלא נתן בו על חד תלתה, because even though he put a little bit wine, but if he didn't put that ratio, which is like 3 to 1, right, the מים of water, חי מקרה נמצא, it's still called undiluted. נמצא לפי זה, אין מברכים עליו, so it turns out, according to this, it says that we don't bless on it, עד שייתן לתוכו מים, until he puts in there water, קצת. little water, כשיגיע לברכת הארץ, יוסיף בו מים כתיקונו. And then when he gets to the land, blessing of the land, then he'll put, the actual amount that needs to be in there, which is more, 3 to 1, as we said. But Rashi sober dechai stam ainu chai mamash. And Rashi says that, not like that. Rashi says that it's really like, when it says it's undiluted, it means like totally undiluted. Okay, below shum מים, without any water. וכדי לתרץ הקושייה, in order to answer the question, פירש שאף על פי שאין מברכים על היין עד שייתן לתוך המים, and in order to answer the question, he explains that אף על פי שאין מברכים עליו היין, שייתן לתוך המים, even though we don't bless on it until we put water in there, כל מקום צריך שיתננו בכוס כשהוא חי. But he has to put it in the cup when it's undiluted, ולא שום תערובת, without any mixture of water. Mine behind the כשהוא חי, and that which we said that when it's undiluted, אין המדחי היינו שמוציאו מן החבית, or alternatively it could be that when it says חי, undiluted, it means it removes it from the barrel, לשם ברכה, for the sake of the blessing. ויש מפרשים דחי קי לכוס עצמו. Some say that the word chai refers to the cup itself, sheyeh shalem, that it should be complete, velo shavur, and not broken. U'shnei perushim elu mikara de milta. So he says these two explanations, en kan kushya klal. There's no contradiction there. Tehad de'mainan sheyeh chai eno inyan netilat mayim beyayin klal. So he says that which we say that it should be chai, it's not talking about putting water. It's talking about the fact that the cup should be undamaged, right? Everything should be complete there. Okay, interesting. So let's move on. So he says, "V'hashta mash katav Rabbeinu Chai." So he says, now that which the Rabbeinu said, the Tur, that it's undiluted, en perusha mamash belo bezigah, perush Rabbeinu tam. So it doesn't mean that it's without any water. According to the explanation of Rabbeinu tam, the opinion of Rabbeinu tam, ate shapir, it comes out good. The ilu the perusha rif, but according to the perush of the rif. ולפירוש הרש"י and פירוש of the Rashi, וגם לדברי היש מפרשים, and also according to this other opinion, חי, היינו חי ממש, some say it really means undiluted altogether, בלי שום מים כלל, without any water at all, וסתם רבנו דבריו לדעת רבנו תם. So רבנו, the two paskin like רבנו תם, מפני שכתבו רבנו יונה והראש, because these two rabbis said, שהוא הנכון, because they said that's the correct opinion. ומי הוא אפשר לדחוק ולומר, but it says we can also force it and say that gam leferush harif, even according to the explanation of the rif, uperush Rashi, and the explanation of Rashi, ka'eh ve'achi, it's going on both of them. Ve'chaki kamar chai enu perusho chai mamash. So it doesn't mean that's totally undiluted when it says chai, below mezikat le'olam, without any dilution. The rif keshegia b'rikat haaretz, according to the rif, when he gets to this blessing of the land, imazgenu b'mayim, then he's going to put some water in there, dilute it. Ferush Rashi kodem sheitchil b'bracha. And according to Rashi, even before he begins the blessing, nami imazgenu b'mayim. He also mixes it with water. Delo kaftinan ela keshikanes letoch hakos keshehu chai. So it's because we're only particular that when it goes into the cup, it's filled up, it should be then undiluted. And right then the Tur said that our wines do not require any mixture of water. Dilution with water. So it says, meaning to say that even though they admit, the rabbis, that the blessing of the wine of the blessing, it doesn't really you can't really bless until you put water in there. That was only with their wines, שהיו חזקים, because they were strong, their wines. ולא היה השבח ניכר בהם עד שייתן לתוך המים. So therefore, really, you couldn't taste its goodness until you mix it with water. אבל בעינות דדן, but it says when it comes to our wines, מברכין עליהן בלא מזיגה, we bless on it without dilution. ומיהו בברכת הארץ נותן לתוך המים, but when it comes to ברכת הארץ, he puts in there a little bit of water, כדאמרין על חי, that we said חי, Amar Rabbi Sheshat Ad Birkat Haaretz, until Birkat Haaretz, until the blessing of the land. Kach nireh mifaresh divrei Rabbeinu. That's the way we explain the words of the Torah. Al pi ma shenahagu olam, according to the custom of the world, limzog kos shel bracha, to mix in, to dilute the blessing of the cup of the blessing. B'mayim Birkat Haaretz, with water, and Birkat Haaretz, the blessing of the land. Mipshat divrei Gemara lo mashma. Even though according to the simple meaning of the Gemara, it doesn't imply shetzarich lemazgo b'mayim, that you have to mix it with water. Ela beyayin shenahen shaya chazak. Only with their wine, which was strong, it was very strong. Ad shaya omer Rabbi Eliezer she'en mimarchin alav borei pri gefen. And then right until the point where Rabbi Eliezer used to say that we don't bless Borei Pri Gefen. And according to the rabbis, the bless on Birkat Hamazon, must go mitzvah min hamubchar. You should dilute it. The best way to do mitzvah is to dilute it. Mia aval bayayin she'eno chazak, but when it comes to wine which is not strong, kol kach en tzarich lemazgo klal. You don't have to dilute it at all. Ubasar dvarim shenemar bekos shel bracha, and when it comes to 10 things which were said regarding the cup of the blessing, lo manu betocham sheimazgenu b'mayim. They didn't count one of those to dilute it with water. On the contrary, amru shetzarich sheyeh chai. They said that they should be undiluted. Ela sheba Rav Sheshat v'chidesh. But then this rabbi came and he said something novel idea here. She'en anu makpidim sheyeh chai. that we're not really particular that it should be undiluted. Ela ad birkat haaretz, until the blessing of the land. Birkat haaretz ve'elach, and from the blessing of the land. And onwards, אם רצה למזגו הרשות בידו. If he wants to dilute it, he may. אבל לא שיתחייב לתת לתוכו מים. But it's not an obligation to put water. ומי הוא שמצווה מן המובחר בעינות שהן. But he says it's proper, it's the best way to do the mitzvah. When it comes to strong wines, chazakim, לתת לתוכן מים, to put water in there. אבל בעינות שדן, but when it comes to our wines, שאינם החזקים, which are not strong, שאין צריך מכל מקום נהגו, you don't need that. But anyway, the custom is להצריך, למזגו בברכת הארץ, they still have a custom, to mix it with, dilute it with a little bit of water in the blessing of the land. Ben beyain chazak, ben beyain shenu chazak, whether it's strong wine or not. Be'efshar shenahagu ken al pi Rambam. So it says it's possible that the custom is because of the Rambam. According to Rambam, who says, "B'chivan shekatav b'perek zayin," that he says in the seventh chapter, "B'chivan shegial b'kat haaretz," that once you get to the blessing of the land, noten letochom mayim. That's what he says there, Rambam. You put wine, you add water there, right? Me'at mayim kadesh sheyeh arev. You should put a little bit water. It should be pleasant to drink. Umashma lehu she'en lecha yain. So there, right? They understand like this that. There is no wine which is not better when you add a little bit water. אין יותר ערב במים בלא מים. ואף על פי שגם בזה יש לומר דיינות חזקים כמה. And even though, right, we could say here that also he's talking about strong wines, שאינם ערבים, which are not really good to drink, not tasty, below מים, without water. אבל יינות שאינם חזקים, but when it comes to wines which are not strong, שגם בלא מים הם ערבים, that they're even good without water, אין צריך לתת לתוכן מים, you don't have to put water in there. כל מקום לא ראו לחלק בין יין ליין. But they didn't want to make differentiation between one wine and another. במדרש רות הנעלם, and it says, right, נזור חדש, סוד נרמז בנתינת המים. So he says there is a secret, a Kabbalistic thing there. When you put water, beyain, right, with the wine, in the blessing of the land. So according to that, we don't differentiate. So you see, this is the thing that we spoke about this before a little bit, right? That according to Kabbalah, you're supposed to dilute it with water, right, regardless of how strong it is. So that's why a lot of people, even nowadays, when the wines are not so strong, they still have a custom to dilute it with water. And that's the proper thing to do, If a person wants to do things the proper way, you should try to dilute the wine with a little bit of water, just like the Rambam says. So according to the Kabbalah, what's the custom? We put like 3 drops, or whatever, something like that, right? And yeah, so it really depends on the strength. From my experience, I'll tell you, you know, depending on how strong the wine is, uh, you know, it's good to put a little bit water in there. It makes it even taste better. Depending on how strong it is. So then it can vary how much you put in. But I think, like we said over here, a couple of minutes ago, that really the truth is every wine is better when you add water. There should be a little bit water added to the wine. Not always a lot, but even a little bit is good sometimes, depending on the strength of the wine. So that's the way to do it. Okay, but some people have a custom nowadays. They don't add any water to the wine at all. They have what to rely on. Definitely. If that's the way they like to drink it and it tastes good to them, fine. Nobody's gonna stop you, right? Whatever. But according to the Kabbalah, you really should add a little bit something there. Also, my rabbi told us, when he was talking about these issues, Rabbi, he told us that nowadays, like these wines which are manufactured, they already add water at the plant. There's already water added there. So therefore, if they've already done it at the plant, there's no reason to do it again at home. That's what he said. But I have to tell you one thing for sure, that when it comes to like the strong dry wines, which are considered to be like the high quality stuff. So there, with those wines, there's no water added whatsoever. It's like totally undiluted. And why is that? I heard from somebody, who knows about this a little bit. He told me the reason why they don't add water to those types of wines is because if you would, it would like it would make it like rot. It would destroy it basically. In other words, when you add water, like and you leave it there for a while, it just like the wine totally gets messed up like that. It messes it up altogether. So that's why, when it comes to the really good quality wines, they don't add any water whatsoever. So there, right, it's a good idea to add a little bit, as I said, depending on how strong it is. So today, like if you're talking about the dry wines, usually the alcoholic the content is like 11% up to 13%, something like that. The strong ones, So those, it's good. It's a good idea to add a little bit, of water. It's not bad at all. Like let's say 10%, 20%, depending on how strong it is. That makes it perfect, for drinking, and also it's perfect according to Kabbalah, right? So you're all set like that, you got it made in the shade. That's the way to do it. Yeah. But on the other hand, when you have like these kiddush wines, like these cheaper ones, that they sell, they're already diluted these things, because they're just like they're very commercial wines, they're not serious wines. So they've already diluted it. They put water in there, and they add also other ingredients as well, into that wine, all kinds of stuff. They sweeten it. Sometimes they add sugar or, all kinds of other things. So those wines, they're commercial wines. They're just, like, for kiddush wines, that's what they call them, right? Whatever. So those are, they don't need nothing. They're already ready to go. But it's all good anyway, right? It's good. They don't need nothing, like Kedem, Kedem wine is, actually it's not bad, Kedem wine. It's not bad at all. But anyway, I think it's already diluted as it is. You can taste it, it's not raw wine. Okay, so yeah, let's go on a little bit. وفي דבריו אין לחלק בין יין ליין, ואפשר שעל פיו נהגו העולם למזוג כוס של ברכה, אפילו יין שאין נחזה, right? So he says that's why the custom is, nowadays that they put, they add water even if it's not a strong wine, and that's the proper thing to do, as we said. Yeah, even those commercial wines, like Kedem, things like this, those Kiddush wines, whatever they call that, right? Even though they do already add a little bit water in the plant, but anyway, to add 3 drops of water, it won't hurt anyway, just in case, you got nothing to lose. So why not, right? You can do that. That's great. Comes out perfect, no problem with that. ועד אמר רב ששת חי עד ברכת הארץ כתב רבינו יונה שמיד שיתחיל לזכור שבח הארץ צריך שיהיה מזוג כדי שיהיה שבחו ניכר בתוכו שעינות היו חזקים ואין מעלתם נקראת אלא על ידי המים ועוד יש לומר so Ben Yonah is saying the same thing that we already saw before, right? That you have to add water, blah blah blah, right? All these things, it's all the same, nothing new over here. ועוד יש לומר שהטעם שהצליחו מזוג יותר בברכת הארץ מפני שכשנותן בו מים בשעת שמזכיר הארץ מראה לכל העומדים שם שבח ארץ ישראל. So right, but the whole novel thing here, is like this, that it's telling you, right, all these poskim, and also, in the midrash and whatever, all these things, that the place where we add the water, is birkat haaretz, right? So what does that mean? That's the second blessing of the birkat hamazon. That's where they added, according to this custom. So what does that mean? That's where they dilute it with water. I've seen, by the way, some people who do this, I think also like in the Ashkenazi world, I've seen some people doing this. They add the water like in the middle of the Birkat Hamazon. They put 3 drops of water in there, people who are particular about this. So yeah, why not? But then also I also see people who don't add any water, right? And that's because as we said, right, our wines are not strong, so they don't really need it so much. So they also have what to rely on. The ones who don't add nothing, it's all good. But right, bottom line is that it's better to add if you don't mind the little effort there. Okay, so let's move on. So he says the reason why they do it at the second blessing, which is talking about Eretz Israel, the second blessing in Birkat Hamazon, is because they want to display, the love for the land of Israel. That's the whole thing there. Shein Shalah Chazak. So what does it have to do one with the other? The love of Israel and and the wine. So the point is like this, right? We want to display that the wine of Eretz Israel is like the highest quality, the best stuff. So that's why they do it at that point. וצריך ליתן לתוכו מים, ואף על פי שמברך בחוץ על הארץ, מאחר שאינו מוזגו עד ברכת הארץ, מוחה מילתא ששבח ארץ ישראל הוא. So he says, even if you do it like outside of Israel, in the second blessing like that, the blessing of the land, that shows people that the reason you're doing it is because of Eretz Israel, even though you don't live there. בעלרות. והראש נוהגים שלא לזוג הכוס במים עד סוף ברכת הארץ, והיה אבא מרי ז"ל אומר שאין להם על מה שיסמכו. So he says some people they don't dilute the cup until they get to the end of this blessing, as opposed to the beginning of the blessing. And he says they don't have what to rely on. He says that's not the proper custom. אומר שאין להם מה שיסמכו, שהרי הרמב"ם כתב וכיוון שהגיע לברכת הארץ נותן לתוך המים. Because the Rambam says like this, right? When you get to the blessing of the land, you should add water at that point. So he's talking about the beginning of the blessing, not the end of it. So if that's the case, right, that's the proper time to do it. נותן לתוך המים, וגם רבינו יונה כתב שמיד, רבינו יוסף שיתחיל לזכור שבח הארץ, right away when he begins to mention the praises of the land of Eretz Israel, צריך שיהיה היין מזוג. He says at that point the wine already has to be diluted. Alma כשמתחיל בברכת הארץ, so he says you see from there that when he starts the beginning of the blessing of the land, not the end, the beginning. צריך לטעון במים. So you already have to add the water at that point. מלא כי פשטה שיהיה מלא עד שאין לנו אלא ד' הכל בסוף פרק שלושה שיכלו. So, okay, very good. So we're done with this Bet Yosef, which was Bet. So let's see what we can find in the Shulchan Aruch here to sum it up, right? All this big conglomeration that we read here. So it says in the Shulchan Aruch like this: Iten ayayin etacho chai. Right? So as we said, right, how do you do this, the whole procedure? First, you put undiluted water into the cup. Right? That's the first step. Then, once you get to the blessing of the land, right, which is the second blessing of Birkat Hamazon, then you dilute the wine, right, at that point to display, right, the praises of Eretz Israel. That's how you do it. So says the Rama, "V'yesh omrim de'im hayayin eno chazak." Some say that if the wine is not strong, right, as we already said, there's other opinions there. And on Tzarich must go. You don't have to really mix it, you know. You don't have to dilute it. So as we said, right, some people do like this, some people do like that. It's all good, you know, whatever. Right? You have what to rely on either way. So that's the way his custom is. He says by us, you know. So he's telling you, right, the Ashkenazim they don't really dilute it because you know their wines are not strong. V'yotzienu min hachavit l'shem bracha. So he says you should remove it from the barrel for the sake of the blessing. ונראה דלדידי שאין לנו דידן, דלדידן שאין לנו מרבה יין, אינו צריך רק לשפכו מן הקנקן ששומרים בו היין לשם ברכה וחבית לאו דווקא. וכן נוהגים במדינות אלו. Ah, so that's interesting. Wow. Okay. So he says another thing here, the Rama, which is that he says by us, you know. So what does it mean? It means to say that by Ashkenazim, with them, you know, as I told you guys before, yesterday or the day before, right? The Ashkenazim, you know, had a problem with wine in general because they didn't really have much over there. You know, like they drank more like beer and ale in those countries, you know, not really so much wine. And because of that, you know, they had a shortfall. There wasn't a lot of availability, and exactly that's what we said, right? That because of that, they were using other beverages, you know, sometimes because of that, because there wasn't a lot of wine, you know, available, and also, you know, because of the high price, you know, and they were not really so wealthy, you know, so you know, they had budgetary restraint, you know, so they weren't really able to afford it so much. And that's the reason why they were using other beverages, you know, like beer and stuff like that, liquor, right? Things like this. Um, so says the Rama, because of this, אינו צריך לשפכו מן הקנקן ששומרים בו היין, לשם ברכה וחבית לאו דווקא. So he says, all you gotta do, you know, is you know, pour it out from the bottle. You don't have to go into the barrel, you know, and get it from there. Just take it from the bottle. וכן נוהגים, you know, that's the custom he says by us. וכל שברכה ילמלנו, שיהיה מלא על גדותיו. Right? So says Rama, but you should fill up, right, this cup of blessing, that it should be like totally full, you know, to the brim. That's what you want, you know. We already mentioned that yesterday in the Bet Yosef. So these are the right conditions that we need to fulfill, right? There's also more. So yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, right, we read in the Shulchan Aruch that you have to rinse, you know, the cup right before you use it for this purpose, inside and out. Got to rinse it. And we said if it's clean, right, then you don't have to. No, there's no need. So fine, right? That's what we said yesterday. So today we just said what we just said now. Uh, so right. So in Gimel, right? I think we also read this one. It says right, tzarich lechazer achar kos shalem. So another thing he mentions here is that the cup should be also right complete. So what does that mean? Like it's not chipped or broken the cup, you know? Nice, you know, good complete cup, unblemished, right? That's the idea. We just mentioned that in the Bet Yosef when we were reading that it shouldn't be chipped, it shouldn't be broken. So all these things, you know, we're talking about. Can you imagine just for this mitzvah? So the reason, by the way, there's so many details with this mitzvah, and we treat it, you know, with such prominence, right? This mitzvah is because they say in the Talmud, you know, that it brings a lot of blessing into the house, you know, to the people, you know, so you know it's a big deal this thing. Also, the Zohar talks about it at length, how it brings blessing, you know. So because of that, you know, you want to be particular with all these little nuances here when it comes to this mitzvah. As we said, right, that it's really if you're just eating home, as an individual, right, you're not really obligated to do this. It's really when you have three people, that's when it starts to become important. So, if you're just eating by yourself, no big deal, or just, a couple, right? Let's say, you and your spouse, right? Whatever, right? Something like that. It's not really so crucial. That's not where it really comes in, this whole thing. When you have a group of three people, that's when it really comes in. Okay, so we said that, and so we'll go on to Gimel. Yeah, we just did bet. So, mm, Shulchan Aruch Gimel we also did. The question is, did we do Bet Yosef? Let me just make sure we did that. It seems like there is no Gimel Bet Yosef. Okay, so we'll go to Dalid. So Dalid and Hey are together. Let's see what we got here. So it says here, Kach mikabelo b'shti yadav. So it says, therefore, what he does is he when he receives a cup to bless on, he takes it with two hands. And when he starts to bless, right, the Birkat Hamazon, then he holds it in his right hand. So you receive it first um, with two hands, and then you hold it in your right hand. Okay. So let's see what it says in Bet Yosef. כלומר, כיוון שאמרו שמקבלו בשתי ידיו, that since it says that you should receive it with two hands, ונתנו לימינו, and then put it in your right hand, צריך לומר שאמר מקבלו בשתי ידיו, היינו קודם שיתחיל לברך. So you have to say, right, that when he takes it with two hands, that's before he starts to bless. ומה שאמרו נתנו בימינו, and that was they said to put in your right hand, היינו כשמתחיל לברך, that's when you start to bless already. מה שכתב, אנא לא נעביד בעובדה, right, that we shouldn't do like this, בנוסחא דידן, but it says in our texts in the Gemara, בגמרא כתב אנן נעביד לחומרה, so we should do stringent, ושתי הנוסחאות עולות בקנה אחד. One second, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was so as we said, right, that Just give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Okay, so as we said, Katuv b'shvila. So he says that these two texts they actually mean the same thing. The Katuv b'shibul leket, and it's written in this book. Katav Rabbeinu Binyamin, Tafka lemin kat le kule bismol. Right. So it says that means that you have to hold it in your left hand. I'm sorry, to hold it with your left hand is forbidden. Not allowed to hold it with left hand. You have to hold it with your right hand. But it says you can support it with your left hand, right? When you're holding it with your right hand, that's okay. The kaimalan, because we hold betzachav bet amudalef mesayea en bo mamash. That we hold that when you support it with your left hand, it's not really significant. So therefore it's okay. And right says that which we concluded that it should be stringent. So it seems like to me that explains, he says, that we don't have to אלא כשתופס הכוס גם ביד שמאל, אבל כשנוגע בכוס אל יד ימין, אם הניח יד שמאל תחתיה לסייע, אין בכך כלום. Right, and so as we said, right, the point is that if you just support it with your left hand, but you hold it with your right, it's okay. That's considered to be that you're holding it with your right hand. כתב עוד שאם היה מברך איתר אוחז בכוס בימינו. And it says, he also writes there that if the one who's blessing, right, is left-handed, so then you still would hold it with your right hand, שהוא שמאל של כל אדם, which is the left of everybody else. כנאמרין על גבי תפילין. So in other words, he's telling you that even if he's a lefty, right, this person, he still holds it with his right hand like everybody else. It doesn't change. ומה שכתב, ומגביאו מן הקרקע טפח, and that what he said, right, that he lifts it up from the ground, one tefach, imhu yoshev al gabe karka, if he's sitting on the ground, but we don't sit on the ground, right, when we eat. We usually are on tables. So therefore we're talking about the table then. So if you're on the table, then you lift it up from the table one tefach. So it says in the Gemara, they only said that you should lift it up from the ground tefach. And the Torah says, right, that is talking about when you're sitting on the ground. But if you're sitting on the table, right, next to the table, then you have to lift it up from the table one tefach. That's what it says in Yerushalmi. That you should lift it up from the table one tefach. So what about this thing that we said yesterday, right? Also, another thing which this cup requires is ituf. So ituf means that you got to cover your head when you do this, right? In other words, your head should not be uncovered, right? So it doesn't make sense to me. He says, he says, then why is that special for Birkat Hamazon? He says, you cannot do any blessing without covering your hair, right? Covering your head. So he says, therefore, ituv means that he puts on the this like extra handkerchief on the hat. When you stand right next to the big people, when you stand next to the monarchy, whatever. So the point is like this, right? That this is like an extra covering of the head, not just your regular covering, which everybody covers, but something extra also as well. That's what he means to say. Like people too, when they go to stand before the monarchs, right, the kings, whatever, all kinds of things like this. Okay, interesting. So we got a little bit more, and we'll finish it off here. כתבו הגאונים כל של ברכה צריך 10 דברים, right? The Gaonim said, as we said, right, yesterday, that this blessing, right, the cup of blessing requires 10 things, right? Meaning what? 10 conditions, right, that we spoke about. We just went through them. אלא קרב פאפא ורב אשי דבצרי נינהו ועבדי עובדה. What does that mean? Yeah, כלומר שהיו נוהגים בכוס של ברכה לעשות יותר ממה שאמר רבי יוחנן. These people were accustomed, right, these rabbis, to do even more conditions than Rabbi Yochanan said. And because he used to also, right, as we said, add some covering on his head. And he would put a handkerchief on his head, right, all kinds of things like this. This rabbi says that tzarich ituv midarav papa Rav Asher, aval lo yitzrich she'ar devarim hageonim והגאונים. So right, so he didn't add other things besides that. והגאונים משמע להו, דכיוון דנתבטלו דברי רבי יוחנן, but right, since the words of Rabbi Yochanan were nullified, beituf, right, when it comes to the issue of covering your head, who adin b'shar dvarim, also the other things as well were nullified. והתוספות כתוב במניינה Rabbi Yochanan lo ate ela milemaute itur. So he says, right, that the number of Rabbi Yochanan, all those things that he mentioned, is only coming to exclude itur. Ad ve'en chaser lanu ela itur. כאן כתב הראש בסוף פרק 3 שאכלו ובתוספות עידן כתוב גם כן דלא משמע דפליג רבי יוחנן ההיא דנותנו למינו ומיהו, וגם אומרים היו עושים עיטוף ועיטור איתור ועיטוף, משמע שהיו מחמירים על עצמם, שהיו נזהרים בכולם, לפיכך יש להחמיר. Right, so in other words, you got all kinds of variations over here. How many of these conditions have to be done? Right, there's different opinions here going on. Each one is saying something else a little bit, right? But anyway, we'll see in the Shulchan Aruch exactly, right, what the custom is to do. Because there are different opinions here going on. Rabbeinu Yonah katav lichora mashma de'afilu Rabbi Yochanan de'amar enanu ela arba'a. So right, some say it's only 4 conditions. Right, modeh ve'ahu denotno lemino. He also, right, includes the putting in your right hand. But nimtza she'elu hachamisha tzarich la'asotan avala. So he says, so it turns out that these 5 conditions you have to do avala hachamisha. But the other 5, right, which is altogether 10, Eno Chayav is not obligated. So he says, right, the conclusion, he concludes over here that like there was 5 of them which was really obligation, and the other 5 were just like, right, stringencies or whatever, or like, the best way to do it, but not really obligation. Okay, so I'll read the Shulchan Aruch and we'll stop here. Well, it's almost 9:30. Even though we started a little bit late, but I will, right, make sure we finish this at least, Melina, there. So you get some, you get your money's worth tonight. I don't want you to go home empty-handed. It's not good for you. Okay, let's see what I have. So let's see what we got here. Shulchan Aruch. So Shulchan Aruch says like this. As we said, right, first of all, you have to, when you take the kos, a blessing, right, the cup of blessing, you will receive it with 2 hands. And then when he starts to do Birkat Hamazon, he holds it with his right hand. And he says, don't assist with your left hand. So in other words, we don't want your left hand at all involved in this, right? Only the right hand. By the way, you guys understand why that is? Why is it? Why would we prefer the right hand, not the left hand? Anybody know?
Left side represents din instead of.
Right, the right side is the chesed, the blessing, right? And the left is the din, right? That's what you said, right?
Yes, Kavod.
Yeah, it's good. We agree on that. We agree. So we have no contradiction there. So that's what it is. You're right. So that's why we don't want the left hand involved here. This is all blessing. We want all blessing, right? No judgment, right? No, we don't want judgment. It says Rama here, so says Rama, what does that mean? We don't want the left hand touching the cup at all. Right? אבל אם נותן השמאל תחת ימין, לסייע מותר. Right? But he says if you just put the left hand right under the right just to help, he says it's allowed. That's what we saw in Bet Yosef. Right. Yeah, interesting. So it seems like there is a little bit of machloket here, because according to Shulchan Aruch, the left hand shouldn't be involved at all, apparently. But the Ramah says, like we saw in Bet Yosef, that if it's just assisting it, it's okay. Okay, that's very interesting. So then he goes on. So yeah, so the truth is, right. I want to give you the proper understanding here, because what the Ramah is saying like this, right? That the Shulchan Aruch said the left hand should not be really assisting, right? And comes the Ramah and says that's only that it shouldn't touch the cup. But if it's assisting without touching the cup, it's okay. That's the way the Ramah explains it. Okay. And that is what we saw in the Bit Yosef, by the way, which is that you are allowed to assist it. But the Ramah says assisting, yes, but it shouldn't touch. Okay, interesting. Then he goes on, but the Shulchan Aruch is mashma not like that. Mashma that it shouldn't assist at all. So probably the best thing to do, is that it shouldn't assist at all. If you really want to get the proper blessing there, whatever. Okay, whatever. There's what to rely on. You could do that if you do like the Ramah. No, no, no problem. Anyway, right? Umagbio le'akarka tefach, right? So it says, and then we lifted up a tefach, right, from the ground. Ve'im hu yoshev al gabe karka. That's only if you're sitting on the ground. Ve'im hu mesed b'shulchan. And if you're sitting on a table, magbio me'al shulchan b'tefach. So you got to lift it from the table one tefach. So in other words, the bottom line is like this, right? When you have this cup of blessing, it should be lifted up off the table. When you're blessing the Birkat Hamazon. It shouldn't be on the table. It should be lifted up one tefach, which is one fist, right? 8 centimeters. And then he goes on. Now, 10 point out. Another thing we said, right, is that another condition is that what? That you should be looking at it, right? When you're blessing. Look at the wine. Put your eyes on it, right? That's what he says, right? Why is that? Because you don't want to get diverted from that cup, when you're blessing. You don't want your mind to get diverted. So then, right, says the Rama, so he says, therefore, right, it says, don't use a cup, right, which is very narrow. Why is that? Because you won't be able to see the wine, it'll be too narrow to see. Okay, well, that's interesting. Shikorin gluk, right? There was a certain kind of a narrow cup they had in those days, and it was called gluk, right? Whatever it says, gluklas. Oh, gluklas. Oh, okay, nice name. לברך עליו, right? ומשגרו לאשתו שתשתה ממנו. And then the next step is, right, what? That you send it to your wife, right? After you do Birkat Hamazon, send your wife the cup that she should drink from it, right? And she will be blessed. Your wife will be blessed. So what blessing are we talking about, right? She'll blessed with the fruit of the right of the belly, right? She will have children, whatever, right? Get pregnant and so forth and so on. Okay, good. That's good stuff, right? What can I tell you? So we have two more lines over here. יש מי שאומר שאם הערך היתר אוחז הכוס בימינו שהוא השמאל של אדם, right? So he says that as we mentioned a bit, Yosef, even if you're a lefty, right? Um, Still, you should hold the cup in your right hand anyway. So, by the way, what's the novel idea here? What's the chidush? You guys understand what the chidush is over here? Like, why do you have to tell me this? That if you're a lefty, hold it in your right hand. Anybody understand what this means? So the idea is like this, that if you're lefty, that means your right hand is like your left, it's the weaker hand. So You may think, well, yeah, well, that's not the hand of blessing anymore. It's like the hand of din, judgment, right? But comes and tells you, no, it's not true. Even if you are a lefty, still the right hand is the preferred hand anyway for blessing. So therefore, you should still use your right hand no matter what. Okay, guys, thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch. We will see you tomorrow. Yes, there's one more day in the week, B'ezrat Hashem. So we'll see you tomorrow. Laila Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
God
Oh,
bless.
thank you so much.
You too.